10 days to go to the start of La Liga. We've come back with tons of signings. We got bullied. We lost 4 Clásicos in a row last year. And today we have Ruri Barlow to talk about Liga. Ruri, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad at all, Siddharth. It's great to be on the show, and yeah, I really like what you guys were doing here. I like as we commented on your background and in general, yeah, excited to break it down and take a few chunks off the La Liga start of the season preview.
Yeah. It's 20 teams, far too detailed for one show, and so we're gonna focus on the contenders and then some of the usual showstoppers who affect the title race in the upper mid table after that. So we'll just start with our usual suspects, Real Madrid. Um, I mean, we're much stronger. We're way better, but a lot of like the Club World Cup almost happened too early in that phase of preseason where we make a bunch of signings, but Dean's not available for the big game, and you lose Trent, and so essentially we got like all the problems that might persist. We saw them, and we saw potential for solution, but I feel like we're really up in the air. Like we should be a much better team. We should be a solid 90-point team, but I don't know. With the dynamics are up in the air, even with the coach and all the advantages. You just never know. There's like a lot of I'm not used to seeing so much confusion internally about what profile the team needs in my time following Real Madrid. I'm used to very clear clarity. Hey, this position is needed fulfilled. And there's been just so much back and forth about controllers, Stiller, Zubimendi. You had that brief moment before he joined Arsenal where they're reporting he's linked to us. It's been a little tiresome for me, and maybe it's just the way social media has evolved too. It's exhausting. But what do you think of our summer? Do you think we're favorites for the league this year?
Yeah, for me, narrowly, I think Real Madrid do have a slight edge. I think the signings at the back are good. Carreras, I mean, promising young left back and probably an upgrade on what you have had there. I think Hausen is brilliant signing. I think he will go on to have a long and quite successful career at Real Madrid, and especially I think coming in under Alonso, we saw against PSG, like you said, Asensio and Rudiger. I mean, obviously the timing of the season, the way that game was, the heat, everything factors into that. But the errors that they make playing out from the back against kind of a tough press, you need some answers to that. And I think Trent Alexander-Arnold will help with that. I think both. I mean, as you say, Zubimendi. That's the big kind of X over Real Madrid. Is do they have the big kind of question mark? Do they have enough in midfield? Do they have somebody that can set the tone enough? I think the fact that Hausen and Alexander-Arnold are there will help to kind of mitigate the fact that I don't really see Tchouaméni as being able to kind of impose himself on the game in the same way that a Kroos or a Modric or someone of that like would. Similarly with Goulet, like he has plenty of talent. It's quite a big leap to ask him to start controlling games for Real Madrid. But I think there's positives overall. And the thing that I keep saying about Alonso is that we don't really know where the ceiling of this Real Madrid will be, but it's especially compared to last season, the floor of this Real Madrid side should be far higher. They should be far more consistent. And I think Alonso will give them more weapons to beat kind of those low block teams in La Liga and the kind of middle half of La Liga that really kind of caused Real Madrid a lot of problems last year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also just we'll be consistent out of possession, even with our problems with the Stars defending. I just think like there was a lot of issues even outside the Stars defending last season, just the shape in which Carlo would have us defend. And when you also tack on the star attackers not defending, it was a whole clusterfuck. Even with the attackers defending so and so, everybody else is in lockstep, and the attackers are trying. I think on some level, I think it's I think even Alonso doesn't want them running to the point where they're exhausted. It's about finding a balance. But I agree, the floor is much higher, and I think it's interesting with Tchouaméni and Goulet. We're so used to having Casemiro being the midfielder we would contrast to Kroos and Modric at Real. So there was always like a big gap between Casemiro and others. And so I think we got to the point where we assumed if you're better than Casemiro on the ball, like you can be the next Kroos or Modric. Like Tchouaméni when he came in was just a breath of fresh air compared to Casemiro. And to this day, he's still like, if you put Casemiro in these situations, he'd still be giving it away a little too much for our liking. So I think that's created a lot of it. And Goulet, yeah, he has really nice technique, but it's weird, right? he doesn't impose himself as much, even though he has the technique. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Maybe it's like, I from what I see, it's usually like with these players that imposing we were talking about is being able to bait a press and beat it, but it's like doing it with complete certainty. Where the moment you're showing the ball to the other player, like there is a genuine chance the other player can win it, but your just speed of thought is always better. And as a player, I honestly couldn't do it, so I don't know how it's done. Like I
Well,
would,
me neither.
like I'm saying, if the guy's coming to me one side of the ball, I'd be like, "Oh, you think I'm going that way?" And I'd turn, but his feet would just be faster than my mind, and he would get the ball off me. And that willingness to like be like, "Hey, you think you have it?" and take it away. That you just need a crazy command of the ball. Modric had it with Guler and Chouameni. It's more they're good at passing. They can weight the passes perfectly, but press resistance or control feels like another step.
Yeah, and I think the big word from Real Madrid, obviously, all summer, Diario As, Marca, whichever you want to read, has been, well, there isn't a Cruzet there. There isn't a midfielder that we can go and get that solves these issues. That's obviously up for debate, and maybe you have to go and try and find one before they become that. With Goulet, I think it is such a big ask of him. I mean, let's not forget that even when he arrived at Real Madrid, he wasn't playing kind of 90 minutes every single game for Fenerbahce. And when he was playing kind of as a coming off the right, but also kind of a number 10 creative role. The team was kind of set up to give him the ball to kind of make that final pass. And so you're asking him to play at a completely different zone of the pitch at a level and at consistency that he's not really done in his career before. It's not to say he can't, but it's something that he's yet to do. And you're asking him to do it with kind of the entire eyes of the world on him as well. And that kind of pressure that comes with it, knowing that if you're Toni Kroos, you might give the ball away once every kind of 20 passes in your own half, or even less than that, probably with Kroos, probably 99%. But if you're Kroos or Modric, you know you might give it away, but it's not going to spook you the next time. And the other team isn't necessarily going to get a sense of, well, we can kind of feed off this and we can kind of hunt them down. So yeah, I think there's you can kind of see that kind of confidence, like you say, that ability to know that you can manipulate things to not lose the ball in a dangerous area, and that simultaneously kind of denatures the opposition because it means they can't necessarily do what they want to do, and it gives you a chance to kind of get out and play up the field, and that is going to be I think for Alonso's side, that will be the kind of defining factor in the big games, in the Champions League games as well. Maybe Alexander-Arnold is kind of the cover for that. Maybe you stick him in there, and I don't know how he is kind of on the turn or kind of with his back to goal, but he's probably the closest you'll get, and Howson can kind of go a little bit longer, as we saw in the Club World Cup too.
Yeah, I'd say even before the Club World Cup, I was confident that Carreras, Huijsen, and we haven't even seen Carreras yet, but him, Huijsen, and Trent just figured they would help. And Huijsen, honestly, is the one who blew it. Like Trent, we know Trent can do it. And like Trent, the way he does it, even Kroos and Modric didn't. It's like just one touch, break a press. It's really unfair. But then someone like Huijsen, I was shocked at like how much midfield responsibility he could take. So he's going to take this league by storm, no question. And so I think the other thing is like we're going to be better. Our floor is going to be higher, no question. And I think on some level, the head-to-head matchup with Barcelona might decide the league. So I think it's a good time to shift gears and talk about Barcelona. As far as just let's quickly go over their transfers and the situation they have going with that, where they're doing things to their club captain, which we will get into. Former club captain as of now. So the incoming Longley from Atletico Madrid, free transfer. Atleti just have a way of having players who you forgot existed, again, trying to make them continue. And
he's gone back out to Atleti. He's left on a free now.
Oh yeah. So he's departed back to them. Yeah. And then Fati to Monaco, and Pau Victor to Mallorca. To Braga, Pablo Torre to Mallorca. So Fati finally leaves Barcelona, and he's only 22. Wow, it feels like he's been there for 50 years. And incoming, they have so let's see, Alex Valle. I guess he left back to Como. They sold him, but they have Marcus Rashford, Joan Garcia, and Oriol Romeo's loan ended. Oh, it's funny, he's back. What What do you obviously Joan Garcia is a great signing. I guess let's start there with the goalie situation. Great signing. Do you have to do it that way because you're low on money? Like where do you have to force Ter Stegen out that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's the great debate. I think a lot of people would say that could you not have just gone with kind of a more kind of upfront conversation? Could you not have gone to Ter Stegen and said, look, this is what we're planning to do? Been upfront with him the whole way through, because it feels like Ter Stegen has been kind of caught by surprise by this whole kind of storm, essentially, and that has kind of made him react poorly, as is understandable. Somebody can tell you you're about to be replaced at work and you're going to be a third choice, that you've gone from basically having one of the biggest seasons of your life ahead of you. Let's not forget that Ter Stegen was due to be kind of number one for Germany at the World Cup next season, coming into a side that has just won 3 trophies and is looking to kind of go and win the Champions League. This could have been kind of the crowning glory on his Barcelona career. So there's a kind of huge kind of drop for Ter Stegen in kind of what he thought he was leaving, in terms of what he left for on holiday and what he's coming back to. So that's kind of a bit of an issue. I think Barcelona should have gone about it differently, probably. But I mean, they keep doing this. I mean, Frenkie de Jong, Rafinha, there is an element within either Laporta's kind of management or within that board that feels that this is the way to go about it and this is the way that they get results. I don't think any club is kind of morally above any others. I think it kind of depends on the people there, but yes, I think it's backfired essentially. And as the comments was just saying, Inigo Martinez certainly looks like a casualty of this, and he might kind of give them the ability to register Marcus Rashford as Juan Garcia. But Martinez leaving is, for me, a huge absence. I mean, I know they've got cover, I know they've got Christensen and Araujo, but Martinez was the one that set the line for Barcelona last season, and without him, I certainly don't think they get that far in the Champions League. I don't think they win the Copa del Rey final. And knife edge, we know how close those Mbappe offsides were in that first Clásico. If Real Madrid win that 3-0, then it's a completely different season.
But is that Martinez's second season at Barcelona, right? He was also there for Xavi's the year before this, correct?
Yes, it is second or third, but I believe second.
Yeah, I believe second, because honestly, when he signed for Xavi, did not expect him to be a big deal at all. And he went from, because Christensen and Araujo looked like impenetrable at that time. You remember, like there was a point when it felt like that is Barcelona's back line. You don't need to mess with it. Then Cubarsí comes in, then Araujo, misplaces passes every time there's a important moment in Barcelona's history. And, I don't know if you saw the joke, but like Barcelona were training like a few miles away from North Korea's border in South Korea, and they were joking, damn, we're a misplaced Araujo pass away from World War III. So I wasn't expecting him to be so good. And yeah, I'm actually totally in agreement with you. I didn't realize, just catching up here, Inigo leaving, that's a big deal. First, I actually think that's a solid signing for Al Nassr as well. Like just a solid player who can mix it up with anyone in Europe, as we saw. And, that leaves them, it's just like, maybe this is the season the pendulum shifts where Barcelona's business makes less sense and they lose all the titles, because like they need that center back. You can't have Araujo ball playing poorly, in considering how Barcelona are reliant on actually just scoring again and again and being efficient with the ball. And then Christensen's always hurt, right? So I don't know what they're doing for that third center. I mean, it's not really a third center back role. It's basically a starting center back next to Cubarsí, right?
Yeah, you'd assume so. I think the idea, at least for Barcelona, is that having not been able to sell Araujo, I think they will try and get him back to his best. And at his best, he is one of the best defenders in the world. I mean, he's on the ball, he can be poor, he can be problematic, but you can kind of coach around kind of one issue, I think, just about, at least. I mean, Xabi Alonso will be doing it with Rudiger this season, I assume. So yes, I feel like you can probably get around that just about. Christensen, I think, is probably the most natural fit for this backline, or kind of the most similar that you can find in terms of Inigo Martinez. But more than kind of Araujo, who has kind of leadership qualities in the sense that like he seems to be quite inspiring, he gets revved up and everything. Similarly with Christensen is a bit more kind of composed, but Martinez was the leader of that backline, and I think that's the thing that you'll struggle to necessarily replace. Let's not forget Juan Garcia coming in to go. I think that's an upgrade, but he is coming into his first season in the big time, playing behind the backline, and so he's probably not going to be calling the shots as much as somebody more experienced would be. And Martinez, yeah, I mean Balde, 21, 22. Kubarsi is 18, 19. And Koundé is obviously kind of the right back. He can't be setting the line either. So yeah, that's the big issue, is who's going to set that line. Can Flick kind of get what he got out of Martinez, out of Christensen and Araujo, which is, as of yet, unproven. Testing. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. All right, you hear me just fine?
Yes. We're talking about the merits of Inigo Martinez leaving.
Yeah. Yes. Apologies. Well, I think I'm sure you closed that up. I just stopped hearing it one moment. But back to this. Want to say the big question I think for Real is also the center back situation. Essentially, like where we're at, like with you were saying coaching around Rudiger. I'm so offended by this like whole notion that like this injured Rudiger who we destroyed is like the new Rudiger that we have to coach around. No, we have to play other players who are fit, and we have to like manage the squad around it. But yeah, if the goal is to turn like an injured Rudiger who we don't want to rest into like someone that can work, I don't know if that's going to work for them. And I guess both these teams have the same Achilles heel, and you almost wonder if there's anyone waiting further, like another Kubarsi. For us, like Asensio is also a problem. He's just not like, I don't know. He's just not. He's been inconsistent, and while he might grow, he's a bit of a project. He's not like some Dean Huijsen where you drop him into the lineup and things are going to work well. So it feels like for both teams, the center back depth maybe has been neglected.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Asensio, like he went on kind of 3-4 months of being very good. I think as a kind of pure defender in terms of if the game's in front of him, if he's tasked with stopping a forward that he's facing, he's fine. He's a good defender. He's a decent centre back. But let's not forget that Carlo Ancelotti went out of his way quite a lot to avoid playing Raul Asensio. Carlo Ancelotti didn't think he was necessarily cut out for it. He always tended to mention Jacobo Ramon before Raul Asensio when he was talking about kind of centre backs, and he had kind of a few experiments as well. I mean, Dani Carvajal's played at centre back. Ferland Mendy, I think, had a game there at one point. So yeah, Carlo Ancelotti's kind of initial distrust of Asensio was a bit of a red flag, I feel. And even if he had that good run, I think where his kind of floor and where his ceiling are kind of unknowns at this point. But he's not somebody that you want to be relying on to start. But yeah, I feel Real Madrid. I think Rudiger will be okay if he does get some rest and if his knee kind of holds up. You only need kind of what I think. If I was Alonso, if I were Alonso, then I would probably be more tempted to go with 4 at the back instead of 5 for that reason. Because if you do play Hausen, then you're playing 2 players that aren't necessarily amongst your best between Militao, Alaba, Rudiger, or Asensio. I don't need 2 of them in my starting lineup if I'm Alonso.
Yeah. Do you think Rashford makes a big difference for For Barcelona, you think Mbappe continues from the end of his last season, Golden Boot? Who do you think is going to be? You think Rafinha suddenly takes over more for Barcelona? Who's your top scorer this year?
I think Mbappe is top scorer, no doubt. I think it's difficult because what Real Madrid wanted from him was to become kind of the major leader, kind of the masthead of this Real Madrid side, somebody that takes the ball and kind of drags them forward in these situations. And maybe we do get that from him this season. But what Mbappe has kind of increasingly been doing over his career is getting closer to goal, making himself more of a finisher, making himself kind of the decisive man in those kind of final few meters, as opposed to starting on the halfway line and running up the pitch in a similar manner to the way Vinicius might do. So yeah, I think Mbappe he's going to need some service, but I think he'll get more than enough from this Real Madrid side. How does Rashford change Barcelona? I think what Rashford brings to Barcelona is, or what he does for Barcelona is more kind of what he isn't, and that's in terms of Luis Diaz and Nico Williams, who obviously were the two that Barcelona pursued first. I think Rashford gives Barcelona a natural forward with a goal-scoring instinct, somebody that can, in the box, make the difference, and somebody that can kind of sniff out a goal. That's something that I don't really have outside of Lewandowski, so I think that's a bonus. And I think he's also somebody that can finish from distance. What he isn't in terms of Diaz and Nico Williams, I think, is somebody that stretches the pitch. I think the idea, and I've criticised Deco in the past, but in one sense, I think he was right, because you get Diaz or Nico Williams in, they stick to the left touchline, they stretch the defence, and they make sure some of the attention is drawn away from Lamine Yamal, who will come more and more centrally to create. So I think the thinking behind that move is really, really good in that sense, even if it wasn't necessarily the priority for Barcelona in many people's views. But yeah, what you get with Rashford is somebody that plays more inside and somebody that will kind of be more of a threat in the box, as opposed to changing the way that Barcelona play, approaching the box. And so, yeah, I think that's what Rashford does and does not do for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in some ways it's funny. He's a lot like the Mbappe profile. Like they thrive in that left half space, being released in behind. And yeah, I think he just frees up Rafinha as well, where Rafinha, I think, seems not too biased towards any angle. Like he can start on the left, but he can also maybe play more centrally. So it still gives them a little bit of that, where you can play less Lewandowski and you have more of an attacker rotation. They're still they don't have any new fullback depth though, right? Like if Koundé is fried, they're still playing out Garcia or whatever.
Yes, although I'd say Barcelona seem quite content with that. I think that's the reason that they haven't at least pursued a right back, even if they might not have been able to bring them in. But I think the fact that Eric Garcia did well against Inter, held up in that final Clásico at Montjuic, I think those games kind of at least made them think, whether it's rightly or wrongly, that we can kind of get by with Eric Garcia as a backup right back. And to be fair, if you look at the kind of options that Barcelona would have been bringing in, you're looking at the Marc Gui's of the world, who's gone to Atleti. You're looking at kind of a project for 15 to 25 million, when Eric Garcia is probably better than you're going to get in terms of that project, at least for next season.
Yeah. No, that financially it's the most realistic, probably just because of the place they're in, where they have to try to lie and trick Nico Williams to sign with them and things like that. But as far as I think a big thing is, like, for me, I'm looking back at that Inter time. Like you guys went back and forth with Inter, who lost 5-0 like immediately in the final. So for me, that tie looks a lot different. And I know Bayern, who are also like not too bad, lost to Inter as well. And you could say both of those teams were pretty good. So Inter just did a good job. But I think both those teams, you have to look in the mirror a little bit and ask, like, what did PSG do that made it so easy for them to walk over Inter that we didn't? And I don't think you can just go look at your underlying numbers and say, oh, like, flip the coin again. If we played PSG or get a different bracket, you could do better. But I think the other thing is also, like, Flick's system does make it so guys like Garcia, their floor is very high. But I wonder then how much of it all was Flick's system. And I guess my question to you is, like, was this, because it's annoying me at this point, but it was Yamal, like, some was he the clear best player in La Liga for you? For me, I think he's a very good player, but I just see a guy who gets the ball a lot more than other players. I see a team that literally concedes goals because it believes in Yamal outscoring the other team. Like they're choosing to do this. They're choosing to give up some chances. They're choosing to let Yamal get more chances to create than the winger on the other team. They want it all to be part of their plan. And so, was Yamal like the clear best winger to you? Do you think he's gonna be? Who do you think? Do you think he'll be the best player in La Liga? Do you think he was even last season?
Last season, I think you could make an argument that Rafinha was more consistent. I think you could make an argument that Pedri was more of kind of an engine for Barcelona, but certainly in those final kind of 2-3 months, it's hard to find people that created more or kind of made the difference more often than Lamine Yamal. I think with him, he's just got such an array of skills and talent that it's very difficult to stop him. And I think Real Madrid have done this on many occasions with Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, we've got Vinicius or we've got Mbappe. Let's kind of angle this so that our two really, really good forwards get more chances than your two really, really good forwards. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad strategy. I think it's liable to come unstuck at times. And I think given the way that we look at football these days, given how much more academic we are about it, we see kind of obvious flaws and we think, right, okay, we need to correct that. We need to kind of shut that down before kind of thinking of the advantages of what it might give you. And so I think Hansi Flick's side confounded a lot of people last season with the high line, with kind of that approach of being kind of a little bit more open. But what Barcelona will have to deal with more this season is kind of an extra season to work them out. I think they'll probably have different injuries. I think a lot of things went right for Barcelona last season, and how they deal with that adversity without, first of all, first season hunger for Hansi Flick. That's always a big one. It's a big reason why Real Madrid and Barcelona cannot retain the La Liga title. That boost, and I think you now have a set of players in Lamine Yamal, in kind of Rafinha, a big group of players who are now kind of on the world stage and have world stage egos, and so you'll have a slightly different kind of perspective if you're Barcelona this season, and I think that will be kind of a big challenge for Flick to manage as well.
Yeah. No, the changing coach, the momentum, especially like Barcelona, they're really not perfect with their signings on the margins, and their finances are not ideal right now. I mean, they're doing a good job given their finances, but yeah, you put all that together, and definitely could see just an easy swing the other way where we win the league. That could definitely play out. I think a big obstacle is Jude's injury, and not injury, but surgery. So he's gone the first few months. Honestly, it should just be a blessing in disguise as long as we get through the first few months. Overall, I agree though. It's just I don't think it's going to be as smooth for Barcelona. I also am very skeptical of Flick style working for like that long consecutively. So 1 year was a miracle, and I think even at the end, like we saw against Inter, the wheels were just barely falling off. And they did beat us. I guess like that last Copa final, we played a better game than expected, and maybe that's some of like the Carlo effect where you're trying to like fight for Carlo in one of his last games, and I don't think that's the best sample. Like that, like Garcia surviving against that version of that team isn't the best sample. Like if I'm not wrong, our team should be much, much stronger every game we play them. I don't think they'll sweep us head to head. And that's why I don't see Barcelona winning the league as easily. The scenarios where we don't win would be if this man here, Vinicius, is stunningly not as good. Because, and even then, the thing is, like, we have Mbappe now, so we might still be able to survive and make it if we defend well and just play fundamentally well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Xabi Alonso, again, that kind of floor argument is quite big, but kind of looking at that final third, it's about kind of balancing. I guess it's an equal balancing job. Is you need to invest Vinicius enough and say that we will give you enough opportunities and we'll give you kind of enough responsibility, enough space, enough kind of chances to run at defenses, while also ensuring that you're getting the best out of Mbappe as the main man. And that's the balance that didn't really work, because there were times last season when you saw the best of Vinicius on that left-hand side, but you struggled to see the best of Mbappe. And part of that, obviously, was the adaptation process, kind of early doors, taking on a bit of a new role. But yeah, if Alonso does change, he does go to kind of two up front, whether it's three at the back or four in midfield. There's kind of a lot of moving parts, but ultimately, if he can balance those two out defensively, I think it's only an issue in 30 to 40% of games, or even 20 to 30% more so. But you need to be able to kind of get that. They need to be able to switch it on, essentially. And that's what didn't happen for Carlo Ancelotti last season, because you swing 20 to 30% of Real Madrid's results last year, they probably still win quite a lot of things. So yeah, like you say, I don't think Barcelona will have it smooth. I do think Real Madrid will beat them at some point. But Alonso's we know Alonso's good in terms of his coaching ability. It's about his managing ability, I think, now.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And I think if anything with coaching, just don't tweak too much. Like get the fundamentals right, but don't be too cute. Like these players will get a lot of it right for sure. So I guess that's a good time to segue into the third member of the big three. When I started following La Liga, there was no big three, so it's still cool like to be alive for this to have a big three. But Atletico Madrid with Simeone right there in the middle trying to steal the trophy. Last year he came close. They are interesting. Kind of want to go over this last 18 months, 2 years of Atletico Madrid lore, but like you have this period of stagnance from them after 2016 and 17. They sneak a league in the middle of Real and Barca sucking, but they don't really rejuvenate even when they sneak the league. Like it's Luis Suarez on his last legs, kind of firing them to the title. And then it feels like last year is the beginning of rejuvenation with Sorloth coming in. And if I'm not wrong, that has continued this season. Like, you have guys like Saul who you never thought he'd ever leave. My grandkids, I thought he would be alive watching Saul play for Atletico. He signed a 10-year contract at some point and stuff. So Saul's gone. They've made a lot of changes. What do you think of Atletico Madrid's summer?
I think they've done a lot of good business. I still don't think people should really expect them to necessarily, if not compete is the wrong word, but to be within kind of the last kind of 2-3 games trying to win it. I mean, there's a possibility, obviously, and you look at how close Atleti got last year. I mean, they were still kind of a month or two off, but if you look at those games, even if they lost to Barcelona in late March or April, early April, both of them, if you look at those games, if they beat Getafe, Espanyol, and Las Palmas, Atletico Madrid were in front of Barcelona in La Liga going into the final Clásico. So, yeah, the margins are fine, obviously, at this level. I think they've made a few too many changes for me to kind of really back them to put up a stronger challenge even. I think Cardoso at number 5, in the holding role in that midfield, is huge for Simeone. He's been asking for that player for about 4 or 5 years, and he's finally got it. Alex Baena, for me, will be their second best player after Julian Alvarez. I think he's absolutely brilliant, and will kind of step up their creative nous. Having said that, you've lost De Paul, who I know is inconsistent, and I know he's frustrating for Atleti fans. If there are any tuned in, hello. But yes, I think De Paul's absence gives you kind of less creation at the base of midfield, and also kind of less of kind of a cool head in those kind of big situations. Whereas Barrios, we've seen him kind of be a little bit rash at times. Barrios and Cardoso, I think, are a good midfield going forward, but they're not perfect. They do still lack a few things. So yeah, I think Atleti's business has been good, but they're probably a little bit of depth and 1 or 2 more players to round out the squad off kind of competing for this title. And yeah, I mean, they're going into next season with a smaller squad than they did last year, so that's probably not ideal given depth is where they fell down last season.
Yeah, I see. So Thomas Lemar to Girona, Rodrigo De Paul decided to go back to being full-time Messi's bodyguard. And Reinildo gone to Sunderland, free transfer. Angel Correa, he's been their bench sub for 10 years, finally gone. Rodrigo Riquelme gone to Betis. Samuel Lino gone. Definitely feels like a much thinner team than we're used to. And I see Arthur Vermeeren as well, sold to Leipzig. So, yeah, would you say you think someone like Thiago Almada from Botafogo, someone like him could help? And I mean, I feel like the attack feels nicer now because Griezmann's obviously declining, and so you have Baena come in, maybe give them the thrust. You still have Alvarez and Sorloth who are doing their thing. You still have, I mean, you have like you said, Cardoso coming in, Almada. I guess it is lacking. On the note of Sorloth, I just wanted to talk about him. I feel like Simeone doesn't always do the best with these tall strikers who don't aren't the most mobile, where they can't play a very intense style of defending and then transition. And so, and also Simeone sometimes just neglects getting his attackers the ball in his game plan. And so, when that happens, you get these tall strikers in the packs. You got Jackson Martinez, you got like
Mandzukic.
Mandzukic. Yes, that was a great example, and I'd even sympathize. I think Mandzukic is like okay, like he was never some insane like goal scorer. He was like a. It's just funny to me that he ended up on two teams, almost two trebles. Like it's crazy that the way football was at that time that you could do it. But yeah, in general, like I feel like he did a better job with Sorloth. It's like he timed the minutes really well. He got impact sub minute goals out of him. Even beat Barcelona. It wasn't enough to win the league, but even did what we thought Simeone couldn't do. Beat Barcelona with Sorloth scoring. What'd you think of that? Do you think there's a base there they build on this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Simeone's kind of thinking or kind of blueprint, you have to kind of roll back and go and look at where he had success. And two big names, Diego Costa and Radamel Falcao. And the level of those strikers is completely different to what Atleti possessed since maybe with Julian Alvarez they can kind of hit that level. Griezmann obviously not an out-and-out number 9, but of that quality. But having those two players who could stretch the pitch for you, who could hold the ball in, who could bully defenders, who could really kind of set a tone for this Atleti side, I think he's always kind of been searching for a balance between that kind of physicality and that aggression that he's never really quite found. I mean, he had Morata obviously for a wee while on 2 occasions. You have Sorloth now, and I think Sorloth's a good player, but I just don't necessarily think he's at that top level. So at that point, you're already kind of making compromises, and I think Atleti signing Sorloth was a bit of a weird move. At 28, yes, he's a guaranteed goal scorer, but you're spending kind of 32 million on him. It's quite a bit of money for somebody that you're probably going to have to replace in a year or two anyway. So yeah, I think if he can get Sorloth to be an effective starter alongside Alvarez, that could maybe change the equation a little bit for them. But so far, what we've seen from Sorloth in his career is that he has insane runs where he just scores goals for fun, doesn't stop, every chance goes in the bottom corner. But he also has kind of runs where he goes a little bit Morata-esque and he misses a couple easy chances, and not having that kind of reliable source of goals, I think hampers Atleti quite a lot. In terms of that final third, I think Almada is kind of a similar option to Griezmann in the sense that he'll kind of drop off and try and be that link. It's just whether you kind of put Julian Alvarez on the end of that link or whether you drop him into kind of a deeper role as well. I think Simeone has a lot of options, but one of the things we kind of criticised him for last season was not necessarily knowing what his best team was until kind of January, February, and even then there's a couple of question marks, and that will remain to be seen again. Is can he get kind of a coherent idea on the pitch again and again each game?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it all seems like a function of never replacing his best teams, his best players with equivalent talent, and then he's just searching for something that no longer exists every season. But yeah, it's been a funny thing because I feel like it's the same season playing out every year in a slightly different variant since 2016. That was the last time. Again, I don't count 2021. That was the weird year. Like I can't count it because they lost in such tame fashion to Tuchel's Chelsea that year, and that just wasn't a vintage. That's not a vintage Simeone. You know, you can only lose to Real Madrid in the Champions League final. That's the vintage Simeone team. If you go out before and if some other team in Europe beats you, that's not vintage. But yeah, the just going through their underlying numbers, interesting. Like 76 points each of the last 2 years. And like honestly, Understat has them at 70 expected points, like which simulates the expected goals for and against. So it says they were basically the same team. So it's a lot of money, a lot of churn, a lot of hype, a lot of marketing for the same outcome. And I wonder if we get more. Probably feels like we're not that far off something similar this year. 76 points in the league. And then if we go the year before, I just want to give you context. Let's see, 77 points, 67 expected points. I have a feeling this will get really repetitive. The year before that, 71 points. Yeah, so they were at 69 expected points in 21-22, and just going to 2021, 66 expected points the year they won the title. So they've been the same team for so long. And sorry, while I'm on this little monologue, I just go back all the way to 2015-16, and they are at 72. Okay, so even their best year, they were propped up by finishing. And I think it's funny. I think that goes to show every year Simeone comes in trying to achieve something. And I think maybe in the first 2/3, he probably gets close to achieving what he wants, more or less. Some years a little more offense, some years more defense. But the big results seem to be decided by whether he has a superstar attacker in the middle of their prime, just going off this. And so, yeah, I mean, I would put money on 76 points, 70 expected points right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Atleti can improve and they can probably break that kind of 80-point mark at least this season. I think their problem is that even if they get a bit better, Real Madrid and Barcelona are going to be quite a bit better in terms of the points they score at least. I mean, Barcelona even playing very well all season. They had that kind of spell between November and December where they just couldn't win games. Real Madrid, as we've said, will be more consistent. So I think Simeone always says it. He says, look, for us to win, we need them to have a bad year and we need to have a good year. And like you say, I think even if you compare on paper, and obviously this kind of comes down to the kind of the results they achieved and the performances they put in when they were signed, they weren't kind of regarded as stars of the game. But if you on paper put Atleti's side up against one of their kind of vintage Simeone teams, there's absolutely no comparison. I mean, the players are just better. I mean, Miranda, Felipe Luis, Diego Godin, obviously, that back four was brutal. It was absolutely kind of a nightmare to face. Whereas now, you look at Atleti's back four, and I think Lamine Yamal probably looks forward to it. I think Mbappe's he feels he can get goals against it. So yeah, I think the major difference for Simeone is that even if Real Madrid and Barcelona aren't as good as they once were 10 years ago, I think his side are also taking a step back.
Yeah, and also I finished going through their expected points. It's kind of ironic. The 2 years they had less expected points when they finished with like 60, where the years they finished second, 2017-18 and 18-19, when we were very bad. So, when they took a step down, we took a big step down, and they were second. But yeah, they've been in the same range. Atletico third. And yeah, it's a shame because it's fun when they're like a real showstopper that can like beat anyone. But it's been a while. It's starting to become like a feature of my memory, not something we see in practice. I mean, when we play them, they're like that, but that's just different. I guess, yeah, watch the Madrid Derby. Watch the Madrid Derby if you want to see Vintage Simeone.
If you want to see a 1-1 draw.
A 1-1 draw, and you're probably going to get 30 minutes where they look peak vintage, because they try harder for those 30 minutes than any other team in world football for any 30 minutes of any game. Or at least that's how it feels watching them. It's annoying. And also, and when you pair that with maybe if our coach isn't always optimal in the matchup, I'd say weirdly Zidane and Carlo never had a big upper hand against him ever, Simeone. Like, it's just like maybe Barcelona routinely have the upper hand no matter the coach. We almost never have much of an upper hand no matter the coach and situation. So, yeah, that's annoying.
I mean, it's partly the rivalry. Obviously, Atleti don't like Barcelona, but they don't hate them, whereas you guys hate each other. So there's a proper kind of grit and kind of an edge to those games that isn't necessarily there. And also, I think with Atleti, or like with Zidane and Ancelotti, as you said, that's quite a significant chunk of Real Madrid's management over the last kind of 10 years. Those are two managers that prefer to try and give their attackers space to kind of work with and a little bit more freedom, whereas that's the exact thing that Diego Simeone wants to shut down, and is to kind of rob that space from Real Madrid. And so, yeah, I think Simeone has been a good match for those managers.
Yeah, and I'd say it's last season. I think, yeah, it was last season, because I've blurred out a lot of last season, just to be honest with you. I don't, especially like November, December on. Like I remember the few good moments when I tried like I tried seeing what I saw, and then from there it would fall apart. But long story short, the game last season I think was the one that got disrupted when they threw stuff onto the pitch mid game, and I don't know, that just was the first time I just felt like the it shifted the momentum. Like we were up 1-0, and it just felt like they would do anything to find a way to shift momentum to make it 1-1. And like damn, it almost felt like, I don't know how to say it, but it almost felt like there's a walkie-talkie. He's like, "Hey, Simeone, like pretend to tell the fans to like stop," like someone's telling him in his ear, where like they're coordinated with the fans. But yeah, that it did break a new level of animosity. So I think now, like even I'm at the point where like I hate them. Like you guys haven't like won a real, like you haven't been good in the Champions League in 6 years. Get your act together. I hate them. And I really want to wipe the floor with them now. And it's just, yeah, last season was just weird like that, and they finally beat Barcelona, but still lost to them the second time around, and that horrendous, and then yeah, that weird 4-2 game, which was just like the ultimate Atletico meme. I feel like of like pretending to stand up to Barcelona only to fall apart. But yeah, really not liking Atletico. What do you think of that game? I thought that was like a step too far. Like or it's not even that. It's like damn, we were up 1-0. Like it just didn't feel fair that they could equalize after throwing stuff on the pitch.
Yeah, and like you obviously come at it from a different angle. If you're a supporter for one side or the other, I think the Frente Atleti behind that goal are well documented as there's more than a bad egg per a dozen in that fan group. Atleti have not done enough to shut it down, and so you will get incidents like this that will happen. It's difficult to know what La Liga or the authorities can really do about it unless Atleti kind of take a more kind of strong stance on it. And maybe that does mean expelling kind of a core group of 5,000 to 10,000 fans, which is painful for the club, and that will kind of hurt their atmosphere, that will hurt their revenue. So yeah, with Atleti and with Frente Atleti, it's a bit of a difficult issue. I should say, having been to Metropolitano a lot of times, there's a lot of fans at the Metropolitano that don't like the Frente. They're quite a divisive part of that fan base, and quite often the Frente will get booed themselves or whistled themselves by Atleti fans. So yeah, I think I understand the kind of the animosity between both sides, but yeah, when it gets ramped up, it tends to spill over in football, and yeah, there's what do we want? I mean, I think I enjoyed kind of Argentina and France and their kind of rivalry in the World Cup. And I think that was good for the game. I think it was entertaining. But at the same time, there were points where it kind of spilled over into pretty reprehensible stuff on the odd occasion. So yeah, like rivalry is great for football. It's a soap opera. It's a drama. So the actors and the characters in it want to kind of fan flames, so to speak, but at the same time there needs to be kind of some sort of responsibility as to what happens when those flames are fan and when it kind of spills over.
Yeah, totally. Well, just to end here, let's do a quick fire through a few other teams and your thoughts. First, Betis, what you were mentioning.
Yes, no, I really like Nelson de Osa. Seems like a good signing to replace Cardozo. Rodrigo Riquelme, I mean, I struggled. My patience ran thin with him a little bit last season, as did many Atleti fans. But he's the sort of player that Manuel Pellegrini will get the best out of, and the sort of player that Pellegrini routinely seems to extract more out of. They've brought in a little bit of depth at centre back. Junior Firpo at left back solves a kind of chronic issue for them at that position. Similarly, in goal, they brought in Alvaro Valles, who you may remember from Las Palmas' kind of incredible run a couple of seasons ago. He's a decent goalkeeper. He will solve an issue. Last season, they had Adrian, who, with the greatest respect, at 37-38, cannot be playing a Conference League final. So yeah, I think Betis have done kind of sensible business. And then there is that kind of cherry on top of the cake, which is off in the distance, which is, does Anthony come back? And if they can get him back, I think you can look at it from a Betis point of view and say that they've been kind of pretty good at replacing what they've lost, and they have the chance to continue and be better next season, having had a very good second half of the season last year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Isco show continue for another year. It's nice. I think his best goal scoring season in years, or maybe his career last year. So very well done. I forgot to check the exact numbers. there was some misinformation floating around, but it was a phenomenal year from Isco. So very excited for that. Next up, let's go Celta Vigo.
Yeah, Celta, I quite like what they've done as well. I mean, Celta are a young team under a young manager in Claudio Giraldez, and they've got quite a lot of good, talented young players kind of coming through, like Sotelo, Damian in midfield, Hugo Alvarez out wide. You've obviously got the Iago Aspas show, which pitches up every year as well. But they brought in Ferran Jutgla, you might remember from his Barcelona days. He's hard-working, kind of a bit of a nippy forward, gets into good positions. And I think Celta, again, similarly, what you want for Betis and Celta is continuity. You don't want your best stars to be robbed of you. They brought Ilaix Moriba back as well. So they brought in kind of bits and bobs of talent, added in Ferran Jutgla. If they can get Borja Iglesias back, you're more or less looking at the same team plus one or two extra bits that finished 7th last season. So for Celta, that's good. Obviously, there's the balance of the Europa League, which will be tricky for them. But yeah, more to come from Claudio Giraldez is what I'm excited about.
What about Valencia? They survived that big flood. They beat us in April in one of the most just dirty game. In January, we beat them 2-1. We had Vinny sent off, and Modric and Bellingham scored after he was sent off. I hate playing them. Are they back? Are they done with the 10 years of Peter Lim limbo or what?
No, but like I caveat this with this is Valencia based on expectations from the last 3-4 seasons. They've lost Mosquera, he's gone to Arsenal. They've lost Jarek Kasiorowski, who's gone to PSV, and Mamad Ishvili is out the door as well, obviously to Liverpool. That was great last summer. But I actually quite like some of the business that they've done. They brought in Copete at centre-back, who's kind of a solid Mallorca, and you'll be used to playing Mallorca in heated conditions as well. Copete is another one that's well-versed in that art. So they brought in him. He's a decent centre-back. I think the ability to renew the contract of Javi Guerra is absurd. That shouldn't have happened. I don't really understand how they've convinced him to stay, but he's absolutely huge for them, and it makes this Valencia side feel like a project again. And I think if they can hold on to the rest of their kind of good players until the end of the transfer window, you can look at it for the first time, and provided they don't start too poorly, Valencia can start playing with a little bit of freedom again and a little bit more ambition. So yeah, I think it's a positive window for Los Che, who are adding bits and bobs and just generally not shooting themselves in the foot as much as they have been in recent years.
In recent years, totally. Lastly, we got a change to a vintage Spanish recipe this year. It's been 10 years of this vintage recipe, or not 10 years, but you know what I mean. It's been 5. Like, I don't remember, when did Alguacil actually join Sociedad?
Would have been 7 years ago, I think, is when he took over, because he had a couple of periods in charge. But yeah, Alguacil gone, obviously. It's quite a big shift for them. Sergio Francisco, the B team manager, has come in. Zubimendi is gone. I think Real Sociedad did need to rebuild. They did need a fresh voice in charge. They did need new things. And I was kind of quite optimistic for them this summer. But since the way that things have gone, I've really kind of doused my enthusiasm, it has to be said. They brought in Caleta Carr as centre-back. They brought in Gonzalo Guedes, who's a player I like, but still no striker for Real Sociedad. And that's the issue that's plagued them for 3-4 years, ever since Alexander Isak's gone. So until they can kind of resolve that, I kind of struggle to see them kind of making much progress. And the big red flag is that Take Kubo came out about 2-3 weeks ago and said, I'm waiting for the signings. I want to see these signings. Where are they coming from? And then the manager was kind of asked about this, and Sergio Francisco said that you shouldn't expect too many signings. I'm happy with the quality of squad we have. So yeah, it's a bit of an issue for me.
Yeah, totally. Well, Taki Kubo, we hope you get some help over out there. Lastly, I guess Bilbao. Now that they kept Nico, are they building on last year even more? Last couple of years, or?
In theory, yes. I mean, Athletic will have Ereso in, who's the right back from Osasuna. I think he's a decent signing. Keeping Nico felt like a big signing for Athletic. I think everyone kind of assumed he would go this year. So I think keeping him was huge for Athletic. But I do have my doubts. I mean, Valverde has been in charge for this will be his 4th year, and I just don't recall too many football teams that have year on year got better. and year on year kind of been on an upward trajectory. So I think you kind of saw some of the issues last season, and the excitement of the Europa League kind of got them through it. This season they're going to be in the Champions League, which will be very exciting again. But that back half of the season is what worries me for Athletic. Once that kind of initial kind of excitement, as we saw with Girona, is kind of gone, how do you then kind of pick yourselves up again to kind of go back to your daily routine, I guess? I think, again, as well with Sunset for me is the key for Athletic. If he's on form, if he's at the top of his game, then Athletic will be a handful once again. But if he's struggling with injuries, if he's not at his best, then I think it kind of really locks down Athletic's options, who similarly also don't have a striker.
What about I guess just on that note briefly, are Girona on track to like be number 2 in January ever again? Are they
No.
Are they back? Is that it for them?
I fear for Michel. I do a little bit. I think he's a good manager, but their business again has been a little bit tardy. They're set to lose Miguel, who looks like he's going to Napoli. Real Madrid fans will be well aware of him, but he's been a very key player for them. And now Martinez might also go. And they've not really brought too many players in. And until they sort out their goal-scoring issues, that's going to be a problem for the Michel side that likes to play ambitious football. They basically stayed up last season because Christian Stuani is still capable of kind of scoring goals off the bench somehow. But that's not a season-long solution for Michel. And I think he's going to need a big month in August in terms of recruitment for them to be out of the relegation battle.
Hey, I mean, we saw the posters they were putting out when they were in the title race talking about how they're a small team. I think they have to maintain that image or something to act like they're not. Maybe that's why they're not signing anyone, so they can, next time they're in a title race, they'll say, hey, look, it's real. But yeah, and, they can, they let Savio go to City. They can point to how they're not backed. But yeah, no, was just curious. It's how the storylines go. Yeah, I'm always curious to see who there's always there's the big three, and then there's always teams that overperform, and maybe every once in a while you get like a really good 4th team, 5th team that's like just hard to play against for the big teams as well, that just doesn't ever give up an inch, that maybe goes somewhere in Europe. So it will be interesting to see how the rest of the league does.
The Getafe golden years you're talking about when they finished 5th.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. And where it was the coach, what's his name? Bordalas. Yeah. Where that style of play is super unique. Like they're playing long balls with 5 guys on one side of the pitch. Like I love all that for sure. Do you think any thoughts on the general direction of Spanish football? Like I know I guess anytime I do it with someone like you, I always ask this question because I feel like as we now in 2025, we are almost the right word is diverging away from, or converging. Like we're going in a different direction from the Premier League, where we've decided you will turn a profit. Like you will not operate at a giant loss. Premier League has decided private equity can come because private equity will always exist in almost what feels like infinite quantities. So it's really never going away. It's a question of whether you open your game up to it or not. And 2 different schools of thought, obviously. But you feel like you're seeing any of the impact of La Liga's convictions now, maybe in 2025, or do you think the new, there's always going to be another Clear Lake or a Saudi or a joint Clear Lake Saudi venture that's going to buy the next Premier League team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think you will eventually, there's only so many Premier League teams, you will eventually get somebody that tries to do something similar with a La Liga side. We've seen kind of attempts at it with Malaga. Espanyol are now owned by Burnley's owners. Valencia obviously would Peter them initially. So I think you will see kind of the odd attempt at that. But I think generally La Liga has kind of come to terms with that kind of healthy profits and that kind of general idea. And yeah, I don't really see too much of a difference. I think we are starting to come out of the COVID period. I think so you're starting to see teams spend a little bit more, but it is still going to be limited and restricted to what they can afford.
Yeah. Totally. No, it does feel like this might be the first summer that we're kind of out of COVID in many ways, like a lot of post-COVID normalization. No worries. Ruri's laptop just took a little tumble there as we wrap up the episode. But thank you all for tuning in. I mean, I think it's pretty clear we predict an upswing for Real Madrid, both of us. We are uncertain on Barcelona. They're good, but they're light in some areas. Both of us are weak in center back, but still the top two teams in Spain with Atletico Madrid clearly third, if not if they're. We'll see how the other teams do. So that's all on today's show. We're gonna have plenty more episodes as the season gets going. Just getting back into the swing of things. Thank you all for tuning in. If you like it, please hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. It always helps us on the algorithm. Share it with your friends. The more people that tune in, the more our show will grow, and we appreciate it as we are running on a loss. Everything here is for free. We maintain everything purely for our own personal pleasure, frankly, just for fun. So any support on the algorithm is appreciated. Thank you all, and we will see you later.